Um, Okay, recording in progress. All right, we're all good. All right. I didn't do hair and makeup this morning. It's
I hear
it's
you.
it's early and it is just pissing cats and dogs
Oh
today, man.
no.
It is
Portland,
Pacific
huh?
Northwest. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. It is a Pacific
yeah.
Northwest day today,
I won't tell you about here then. So I won't be that guy.
Please, please don't. When I was living in Santa Barbara for those couple of years, I always told people it was a bit like Groundhog's
Yeah. Oh, gosh, 75 and sunny is like so boring, like that's what it feels like, man. Yeah, I hear you.
Love it.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So the first question I'm just going to read to you before I fire it off, just so you have it in your head. The first question I'm going to ask you is what sparked, this first seed of this book, or what was your motivation for writing this book?
Okay.
Do you have a preference for which way I ask that
No.
question?
Yeah, either way.
No.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna ask you what your motivation was for the book.
Yeah.
As we get started, just give your name or give your title or any little bit of background you want or any type of image that you have to your
Okay.
profession. And then yeah, go ahead and dive right into what your motivations were. Okay.
Okay.
All
You
right.
got
I'm
it.
gonna ask the question.
Here
Okay.
we go.
All right, Jeff. Hey, thanks for being here with us today, man. I know your time is so valuable and you're doing such good work. So we're very, very, very privileged and honored that we get to hear from you today because we are so excited about your new book coming out and we are going to learn all about it from the man, the myth, the legend himself. So the very first question that I want to ask you is, what was your motivation for writing this book?
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me here. I'm not sure I can live up to all that hype, but I'll do the best I can here. So, yeah, I'm Jeff Troesch. I'm in my 39th year of doing mental training for athletes. So, I used to say one of the early dinosaurs, but people told me that doesn't sound very good because they ended up dying and they're extinct now. So, it's suggested that I call myself a pioneer rather than a dinosaur. But been fortunate to be across many domains of high performance sport, NBA, Major League Baseball, U.S. Soccer, Olympic development programs, multiple Division I college programs, and currently have a number of professional athletes that I'm consulting with alongside 24 Division I college teams at 11 universities. And So I stay busy in the world of mental training. And why the book and why now? Frankly, I have been approached for a number of years about writing a book, and I have been loath to do so, and have basically stiff-armed anybody who even brought it up. And as I've grown older and see at some point the end of my consulting, and at the risk of being morbid, like the end of my life I'm getting up there in years, and I've started to get some energy around. I feel like I've learned a lot. I mean, I know that I've been exposed to so much, and by so many thousands of athletes have given me the privilege of sitting, behind closed doors with them, and I've really learned a lot. And I felt like it would be unfortunate if what I learned was lost. And I don't know, speaking just really plainly, I don't know that the stuff that I've learned is necessarily unique. I mean, other mental coaches, other coaches, other people obviously have access to athletes, and there are a lot of people out there working with athletes now. But because of the volume of athletes that I've worked with, the levels of athletes from literally 8, 10, 12-year-olds, which I don't do much of that, but all the way through 70-year-olds and everyone in between, I feel like I've got sort of a unique perspective on all things mental training. So I was approached a few years ago by some folks at the publishing company, and was sort of convinced that they could hold my hand enough that I could do this. And part of it too for me was I just what I do is what I do every single day. I work with athletes, I work with coaches, I work with teams, literally oftentimes 7 days a week, and I really didn't want to take time to write a book. But that being said, over the last couple of years, probably 3 years now, is when I first started getting serious about it. Logged the hours in, put the time in, and my intent with the book, and I hope it falls in the place that I intended, is is basically to just share what I've learned and to generate thought on the part of the reader, to create conversation between constituents, whether it's parent and child, whether it's coach and athlete, whether it's athlete to athlete. Basically, just want to drive consideration towards expanding insight and teaching what I've learned. So, a long-winded answer to your short question, but that's the deal.
Well, I love that though because you were explaining and you were laying kind of the background there of just your own personal experience and your own perception and expectations of taking on a project of writing a book and kind of stepping into a space where maybe you weren't as comfortable or maybe where you just didn't feel as motivated or feel like you had as much to gain, or maybe it wasn't going to be a fulfilling experience for you and knowing what is meaningful to you with your time. But it sounds like at the end of this, on the other side of it all, it has proven to be very much worthwhile. And I kind of see a parallel though with maybe the way you work with your athletes or your clients and coaches of also guiding them through experiences that are maybe a little bit uncomfortable or maybe not something that they want to do but might be really good for them.
Yeah, yeah.
Did you kind of like see yourself coaching yourself through that
Yeah,
as
yeah,
well?
yeah, yeah. That's really astute insight on your part. And yeah, actually, in some part of the book, I reference the fact that I would never have written this book without I wouldn't have been able, I don't think, to write the book without the help of my editor, because she was the one. She was basically the Jeff Troesch in our relationship of like, come on, yeah, you can, you're going to be okay. And I'm like, oh, I don't want to embarrass myself. I don't think anybody's really going to give a shit. Like, do they really care about this? And she's like, "Oh, really? I think this is fascinating." I'm like, "Really? Do you think so?"
Yeah.
And so definitely out of my comfort zone, definitely parallels with, being there and affirming and guiding and honestly for me, I said in my introduction or preface in the book that I'm not very good at a number of things that are in the book. I've got 150 concepts in the book, and frankly, I'm pretty poor at a number of them because I'm human. And despite doing this for almost 4 decades, the stuff around mental training and mental performance and those sorts of domains, it's really difficult. It's hard work. It's not easy. And so I did find myself definitely being pushed out of my comfort zone with the hope that it would land, as I said earlier, like it would land in a way that people would be impacted by it. Not as much appreciative of it because that's more about like what they think about me, but
Mm.
my real intent was to just be helpful. My initial thought, frankly, was I'm just going to throw all this stuff on the internet and just throw it out there for free, and people can just have it, right? Because it's like I just want people to have it. I just want to share it. And then they're like, yeah, you could probably write a book and whatever. And I'm like, okay, maybe. But the landing of this has been the feedback that I've gotten so far. Honestly, the first couple weeks of feedback was, I said to my wife, it was just amazing and so affirming and honestly very humbling. I said to my wife, I feel sort of like I'm at my own funeral because these people are saying all these wonderful things about me that normally I don't think I would hear unless I was gone. And so I was like, oh my gosh, that's so nice, that's so kind, and it's not like people haven't been kind and flattering along the way, but it's really driven people to be specific about some of the areas of growth and the areas of impact that they got from the book and or work with me prior to reading the book. So it's been very affirming, very flattering, and a very challenging road for me with the parallel of what I'm trying to walk when I'm trying to walk alongside the athletes. That was my editor walking alongside me for sure.
Absolutely. What do you think would be something that you learned about yourself through the process that you could like look back and talk to Jeff of day one and say, "Oh, I didn't know that about me."
Yeah, I think what I didn't know about me is that I probably have not given myself, however this comes across, I've probably not given myself real credit for
Mm.
or deep affirmation for the impact that I've had on people's lives.
Ah.
And I learned about me that I have a very difficult time accepting that feedback.
Mm,
Um, I have been 40 years of helping others, and when people do kind or nice things for me, I have a very difficult time dealing with that. Not that I don't necessarily think I deserve it. I don't think it's quite that pathological. Maybe close to that, but I think it's more just unfamiliar territory.
sure.
Despite hearing from my athletes, despite hearing from my coaches, the coaches and athletes with whom I've worked and teams with whom I've worked, I do have deep satisfaction over my years of knowing that I've had some sort of impact. But I think what I've learned is I have a difficult time accepting that stuff from others. I didn't really appreciate deeply the value and benefit of something like writing a book and allowing people to experience it. And I have it's interesting. Like I didn't want to write books. I don't want to do podcasts. I don't want to do anything out there because I sort of had this sense that why I was good at what I do is because of my artful delivery of it,
Mm,
not because the concepts themselves were actually all that interesting or whatever. And so so the other part of the other side of the coin is it's been also a little humbling because I'm realizing like, hey, these concepts actually play on their own like
mm,
without me in there, leveraging it and the nuancing it for the athletes. I'm sort of like, man, I probably missed something on behalf of the athletes with whom I've worked. I probably missed opportunities along my career. I mean, I wouldn't have had 40 years of experience 20 years ago, but
right.
had I put more energy at these sorts of things, I think they could have been more broadly impacting than the ones or the 30 that are in front of me. I think had I been able to evangelize more broadly earlier in my
Mm,
career, I think this could have had more impact. So that's something else that
wow.
I learned as well is like, okay, yeah, I've always said like, oh, I don't, if somebody wants that, they can just go, read a book or whatever. Like I want this, but the actual read a book part actually does impact people
Yeah.
more than I think I'd appreciated. So, and we're in early days. I'm only 6 weeks into the thing, being out there in public domain. But so far, the feedback on it has been very nice.
That's excellent. That's just such a rewarding feeling. Um,
Amen. Amen.
especially for, well, I mean, it's just, and this is aside from the interview part, I'm just going to talk right now, but
Yeah.
like, just even like the fact that you can recognize that, um, there's a value to your personal experience, like, and you said it perfectly that like, okay, here is the technique, or here is the educational piece. It is the same for you and me and them and them and them. We all deliver the same exact topics, right? But
Right.
the way in which we do it and how we do it and the way it's felt,
Yeah.
I think speaks volumes to what you have curated over all of this time, right?
Yeah.
Because you can mindlessly go through it, right? Or you can superficially go through it and check the boxes.
Right.
But to really peel back, I think those layers and have an internal connection, like to really internalize the work you're doing.
Yeah.
I think that's wisdom there, right? It's practicing what you're learning. It's not just
Yeah.
storing
Exactly.
it and then right letting it go
Yeah.
away. Um,
Yeah.
and that's really hard to do.
It is, and I think now I'm realizing was under the misconception that I would not be able to deliver
Mm.
that essence in a book format. That I
Yeah,
felt, and
right,
I felt
right,
like, oh, really the only way you want to get all things Jeff Troesch, it means like get on a Zoom with me or sit down in an office or get out on the
right.
ballpark with me or whatever, right? Get in the dugout or what on the sidelines. And what I'm realizing is I still would argue, and I think it's still valid that probably the next level interaction, enhances some of the
Mm,
subtleties and some of the nuances. But I do know that, the feedback again that I'm getting is that not 150 of the concepts are going to hit everybody in the same way, right? But
right.
somewhere contained in there, they're going to be things that affect people because I have learned this. I love your word because I've curated this and been able to deliver it in the fashion that I have in the book, I feel like it does have an impact. It does play. And I've been saying my whole career after maybe the first 8 or 10 years, I've been saying like so much of this is art and not science.
Yeah.
So much of, I mean, so much of coaching is, so much of teaching is, so much of parenting is, right? It's not like this is the only domain in which that plays. But for me, in early years of doing this for a living, I was trying to sort of cookie cutter it. Oh, this is how you do imagery. This is how
Right.
you do goal setting, whatever. That's what I was taught, like SMART goals, whatever.
Hmm.
And after a while, I started to realize, like, wait a minute, what I'm actually experiencing with athletes doesn't align always with these things that have been put forward as, best practices. And sometimes they work wonderfully, but there are other ways to get to the mountaintop. And so discovering that alongside the athletes and coaches with whom I've worked over these years has been really a big part of the joy of the job is I'm a very curious guy. I love to discover, I love to explore, and so digging deeply into those things alongside the athletes, I've always felt like I get as much out of my interactions as they do, and to be able to sort of solidify the different methods through which I can help people get to where they want to go. I mean, it's been fun. It's sort of like a game within the game for me. It's been sort of like a difficult puzzle that I keep getting clues and trying to crack the code on it, and ultimately knowing that there's no ultimate answer, but it's been cool.
Cut right there. That is the tagline right there. That you just nailed it right there, man. That was excellent.
Oh, cool. All right.
That
Nice.
was excellent, man. That's gonna be the opener right there. Wow. Wow. I mean, I think it's interesting that you bring that up because I think that's an area that is, I don't know if it's necessarily overlooked or just straight up ignored.
Which
This
part?
this idea of the cookie cutter template of, you've got this, okay, here's this technique, and then here's the process, here's the
Right.
methodology, blah 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 blah,
Right.
or whatever, right? The way it makes me think about it is just taking like another kind of like social psych, developmental psych approach of like the Kubler-Ross theory of like death and dying, right? The
Yeah.
stages of grief, right?
Yeah.
um and how contemporary research has completely debunked that cross culturally, saying
Yeah.
like, actually, some people start out in the fifth stage, and like some
Yes.
people, right?
Right.
So imagine if you were taking that cookie cutter to every single person, right, and
Right.
completely missing all the nuance that you're talking about, and the
Right.
richness of the personal experience, the
Yes.
individuality of it all.
Yeah.
So I think that is an excellent point that you made.
Yeah, yeah, it's again interesting insight and from you, and appreciate the application of that. In early days of my career, wanting so desperately to be effective and to do the right things, that I know that I missed some of the messages from the
Mm,
athletes themselves, that had I been listening more closely and been more receptive to alternative ways of approaching things, I probably would have been more effective with them. And actually, I think honestly, I think you captured in your book, the
mm,
stuff that I read in your book. I think, you're obviously very methodological. It's more textbook oriented, but I felt like you did a really nice job of juxtapositioning multiple ways of getting, like, again, my different paths to the mountaintop. I use that phrase all the time. And I feel like, you really laid out a really nice menu of, hey, maybe it's this, maybe this works for you. And here's another way to, hit the same construct, but in a completely different way to get there. And I thought you did a really nice job of categorizing and conceptualizing those things. It was actually really helpful for me because I don't think like that. Like I have a very difficult time when
mm.
people have said, like, what do you do and how do you do it? I'm like, I don't know. Like, I can't describe it. I don't even know what to call myself. Like, what do you do for a living? I don't know.
Yeah.
I can tell you who I hang around. I don't know. Like, I literally, I have a description for me is very difficult. And so
Mm,
I don't know why my brain doesn't work like that, or I have never found the necessity for it. But when I read something like your book, for me, it's like, oh my gosh, yeah, that's what I do. And
mm.
now I get no, I get that, but that's
Right
with just,
on.
like there was, and honestly, it really did that for me. It was sort of like, wow, okay, I can, this is, oh yeah, that plugs in. That's when I do this, but I call it something
Yes.
different and I have nuanced it in a different way, but oh, okay. So
Yes.
rather than for me, like model driven to doing what I do, I've been more like doing what I do and then like, oh, I guess I could plug that
Mm.
this structure or this construct. Because I'm so far removed, literally I was doing this stuff 1987 is when I left
Yeah.
left graduate school, and so the concepts back there were very rudimentary and really cookie cutter, and so it really was like go figure it out, man. And
Yeah.
so
Trial
that's
by fire.
yeah, that's what I've been doing. Like figure shit out because like you can do this all you want. You got here's your little toolbox. And like yeah,
Right.
but now it's like I've got a massive toolbox, but that came from me out there like cutting myself and hitting myself in the head with a hammer a little bit, and then figuring out how to actually use this shit, right? So yeah,
Yeah, chewing your words a little bit.
yeah, exactly.
That's yeah, everyone remembers that one session they had where where the clients, the athlete or the coach is just looking at him like, "What are you
Yeah,
talking
you've got no,
about?"
yeah, or an entire room of people, and they're looking at you like, huh? Like,
Yeah.
oh man, yeah.
Well, on that note, I have a question that's going to specifically address that. I'm going to read it off to you because it's about the skill set stuff
Okay.
in your book. All right. So the question is, when you wrote the book, what was the guiding idea that shaped your decisions about what was going to go in the book? So your 150 skills or techniques or whatever.
Yeah.
So like that, like what was your idea behind specifically that? How did you arrive at that? Is that something that's been going on for a while, or is that something that the editor was like, you have X amount of words,
Yeah. Yeah.
But like, so share with us these 150 skills. What is it about? What didn't you include, or was
Okay.
there a specific reason?
Yep.
That kind of a deal. All right.
Got it. Yep. Perfect.
Okay. All right. Here we go. All right, Jeff. So when you were writing this book, putting that mastermind together, you've mentioned that you've got 150 skills in this book that you cover. Can you tell us more about just what shaped that approach and where does that all come from?
Yeah, sure. So I said that I hadn't really contemplated actually writing a book until 2 or 3 years ago, 3 years ago, I would say. But along the way, I've kept notes for myself about the things that I felt like were helpful with the athletes with whom I worked. And when I do individual sessions or when I get in front of teams or groups or organizations or whatever, like I had some specific, I don't know, models or concepts or things that I wanted to make sure and drive home points around, whether it's around confidence or around competitive anxiety, whatever the topics were. So I kept a little file on these things, and they were literally like bullet points or like a concept, or occasionally it would be as much as a paragraph of something. And then when I was offered the opportunity to write this book, I felt like, okay, well that would probably be the backbone to writing the book. And initially, the concept initially was write a book like every other self-help book out there or every other book, which is, tell a story or integrate, your knowledge into some sort of fashion where it like flows from A to Z. And what I realized was I didn't have a story that I wanted to tell, in part because, as I say early in the book, I think in the introduction, that I don't mention the athletes. I don't name names on the athletes with whom I work. I never have. I don't in the book. So for some people, disappointed because it's not a tell-all about the athletes. Some people know some of the athletes who, when they were, oh my gosh, I can't wait to hear about so and so. I'm like, yeah, I don't mention anything about any of them. And so for me, there wasn't as much a story to tell as much as I wanted to deliver. I wanted to deliver the information, so that was sort of like bullet pointed, rather than flow. And secondly, I really didn't want my book to be about like, oh, here's I didn't I want it to be informational to some degree, but I wanted it to, as I said earlier, I wanted to generate contemplation. I wanted it to generate, further exploration and insight. I didn't want it to be like, hey, you do this and you're going to feel better or you're going to improve your performance. I want it to be more like, here's a concept. It may or may not, be of value to you, but read through it. Where in your life might that be interesting? How might this affect you? How might this influence the ways that you approach your world or your craft or whatever? And so for me, it was more of a like, all right, so now in my mind, it's like I've got all these different things, and like, how do I consolidate them? Because initially it was like, okay, we'll have a confidence chapter, and then we'll have a, whatever. I'm like, yeah, but this thing actually could be confidence, but it could also be self-efficacy. It could also be, all these other pieces. So I didn't want to be like painted into a corner of having to label things in a
Mm.
particular way. Then it went down the path of, so the editor's like, okay, just brain dump. And so I got to this place where ended up, I don't know, 280 or 290 concepts, right? And it was just like literally a brain dump. And just
Wow.
banging it out over, I had a fair amount of this already captured, but then I had just banging out more of it, just bullet points, right? And then it was like, oh, maybe we do a thought of the day, 365,
Oh.
so like a daily devotional sort of a thing, or a thought of the day sort of a thing. And so at one point we considered going down that path. Then it became, all right, now flesh out these things. And even though a lot of the concepts are no more than 3 pages long, most of them are like 1 or 2 pages long. Then
Oh,
it
okay.
became a word restriction. Like, okay, we're not writing War and Peace here. It's not the Old and New Testament. And so we need to narrow this shit down a little bit, right? So then it became a word count deal.
Mm.
And so now we're narrowing, and then it became, oh, let's land on a hard number that I know, because that when I actually did it, we finished it, it was like 137 concepts, and I'm like, yeah, 137 concepts, like it doesn't land, right? So not like 150 necessarily does, but it's like let's pull some in, and so yeah, there I would say there are a number of things that I did not include, and no, when asked, no, I'm not writing a second book. I have no intention to do that.
Oh no. Okay.
No, 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 no. I have no intention to do that. Uh, I feel like, I don't mind a little bit of an expansion on this one. I don't know how that might happen, but I don't want to do another
Mm.
full book. But I would say that, the primary concepts when I'm working with an athlete, or when I'm working with an organization or with a coach, I have what I call my basic models from which I operate. So certainly those are all captured in this book. Those for me are like primary foundational elements from which I teach anyway, like philosophically what I believe are important foundations for people to appreciate about themselves, about what they're doing. And then from there, honestly, it was a fair amount of like editor and I just talking. Is this interesting? Does this have broad appeal? Whatever. So that one's out. Or like, oh, we really want to make sure we keep this one in. So there was just sort of a back and forth on that. And I'm happy with where it landed. Do I love all 150 of them equally? No. Do I feel like there's some things that maybe wouldn't have included? Yeah. Some things that I maybe would have liked to have in. Yeah. But you can't be all things for all people. And I'm happy with where it landed.
Yeah. That is a very humble recognition, especially for someone in your role. I cannot be all things to all people.
Yeah, yeah, but yeah, I know that I'm a really good fit for some people. I know I'm not the best fit for others. I know, like I know this book already resonates, and amazing feedback already resonates well with some people. I know, some people are silent about it, and I'm not sure a lot of people. I mean, once people read this that don't know me, I'm assuming I'll get my occasional troll or whatever, but
Sure.
for now, nobody said anything negative about it. But I'm sure there are some
Sure.
people who will, like, yeah, yeah, this sort of falls flat, whatever. Okay, so again, my intent was not, and at the risk of sounding like like overly modest, like my intent
Mm,
was not for people to like me
mm,
and to appreciate me. That wasn't why I wrote the book. I mean, not at all. For me, I wrote the book. That's why I've never named names of my athletes. That's why don't have a website. That's why I've stayed under the radar my whole career, because I want this to be about, here's a concept, here's something that I think can be helpful. Please take advantage of it if you can. And I
yeah.
understand that for some people that'll fall flat, and I know for other people it can be transformational. So that's why I've always done what I do, and that was the intent behind the book too.
What do you think? What would you see then as the heart of the book then? because we're spanning, you're spanning quite a bit of information
Yeah.
and a lot of different ways in which these applications, like you mentioned earlier, someone could just take a sliver from a couple pages of the book and that's their entire takeaway.
Yes.
Other people might be, devouring the entire book, right? They might live and
Right.
die by it. You might have
Yeah.
followers, Jeff.
Yeah. Oh God.
you
No.
know,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
but what would you say is like the heart of the book? If it was a specific chapter or if it was a specific concept, what would you say is what everything is orbiting around?
I think everything orbits around the title of the book. I mean, the reason why I entitled it One Day Better is because I feel like any of the 150 concepts integrated into life experience, integrated into more insight, integrated into deeper contemplation, integrated into some awareness means that we're advancing towards excellence or mastery or deeper understanding or whatever. And so I think any of the 150 concepts, as you said, even if it's just one, it doesn't, I mean, it doesn't have to be 150. Even if it's just one, I feel like it can move a person's needle on the daily. That helps me be a little improved, a little better, a little, wiser, a little more experienced. And so, each of them they're standalone concepts. It's like I tell people, it's like a bathroom book. Like sit down,
Oh, there you go.
do your deal, crack it open,
Yeah.
read a page or two, done. And so it's not a like gosh, you got to read 1 through 150, right?
Right.
And so
Right.
there's that, and so to your point or to your question, there's not a theme in the book. There's not a like a heart and soul of the book other than it's about human performance. It's about, relational improvement. It's about deeper understanding and insight of self. It's about, moving in a constructive and more thoughtful direction towards excellence. And those are
Yes.
sort of the core pieces of it, but every single one has its own subtle nuance.
Yes, 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 yes. I like that. It's when you were talking about the doing the business, I thought like you can do your daily dumps.
Yeah, 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 yeah. There we go. Yeah, rather than a daily devotional, right?
That's
Yeah,
hilarious. That's
yeah,
amazing. You
yeah.
might have something, man.
There we
You
go.
might.
That's right. Yeah.
That's so clever.
Yeah,
That's so clever.
yeah,
Oh, geez. Well, yeah, no, I really do like that. I really do like that because I mean, I think, I mean, you have so much experience with what type of literature exists in this space
yeah,
and what has just been redundant and superfluous
yeah.
and maybe everybody connects to something,
Right.
right? Everybody connects to something, right? But it's a matter of you doing something different.
Yeah, I think it's different. The feedback I'm getting is that it's different. I would say that a lot of people in our field who have written books over the last few years, my own experience with them has been I can't remember a book that I have read that I didn't feel like there was something valuable in it. I feel like
Mm-hmm.
there's some takeaway from
Mm-hmm.
everything that I've read in this domain. And yeah, some of it feels redundant or superfluous. And we who do this every single day, it's sort of like, yeah, 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 this is what I do every day. There can be a little bit of that, and I would think that practitioners may do a little bit of that with my book too. I would assume, which is fine,
Yeah,
which is fine. And so I would what I tried to do different was to have it be the soundbite, the little nugget, the quick takeaway. And I think that also fits today's society, our attention span of
for
7
sure.
seconds, and we want microwave solutions and give me the quick hack and whatever. And I think sort of it's a little bit of like, uh-oh, when people read this book, because I think they're anticipating a short hack, like, oh, 2 pages, it's going to give me like key to the kingdom.
Yeah,
And actually, my intent is to do exactly the opposite. Like what I want is like, okay, you get a two page like nibble, but it's going to take you a long time to swallow and digest this thing, and it
yeah,
actually it actually doesn't go that fast, right? I had a professional pickleball guy that I work with who's like, hey, I want to get my hands on your book because I got a 17-hour flight to Indonesia and
yeah.
I want this book to read on the plane. I'm like, yeah, dude, you know what? The book actually, it's to be read in like 5 minute segments. So I said, the plan would be like read one concept for 5 minutes and then spend 17 hours contemplating it. He's like, really? He's like,
Absolutely.
really? I'm like, yeah, that's sort of how the book is read. He's like, I don't
Yeah.
know about that one, but so
Wow.
that's the intent. It's in the way that I think it's different is that I intend for it to not give you direct answers. It's not supposed to be, here's what you do, here's how you do it. I mean, there are a few of the things that I think people feel like it's a little like there are some solution-based ideas in there, I
Sure.
think. Primarily, it is to contemplate, different ways of approaching things, and there are a number of concepts that contradict one another in the book, which I speak about intentionally because one of the concepts is one of the early concepts, one of the foundational concepts for me is that there's not one right way to do anything, that
Mm-hmm. Mm.
there's only an effective way to do things, and what might be effective for you and what might be effective for me might be diametrically opposite. And that again, that's where I'm getting away from the cookie
Wow.
cutter mold, right?
Yeah.
And so sometimes within the concepts, I'll talk about it could be this, or it could be the exact opposite. It could be this. And then in other places, I land a concept and then later talk about diametrically opposite of that concept. Here's another way to approach, again, that like the opposite path on the mountaintop. It's the exact
Mm.
opposite way of getting there, but that might work better for you. And again, because I don't want this to be a here's how you do it, go do this, and prescriptive. It's not that book. It's
Right.
contemplative. It's like, is this true for me? Might it be true for you? Is there another way that you can nuance this to possibly fit you better, as opposed to here's how you do it, go do these 5 easy steps, and you're going to be cured of whatever you think is broken? That's not this book. Yeah.
Wow. So it sounds like, so what I'm getting from you then is in terms of what this book, what this piece of literature can contribute to the larger conversation of sports psychology is that you are, it's providing a space that is not so formulaic and maybe a little bit more freeing.
That's a great way to put it. I haven't thought of it in those terms, but that's exactly it. For me, I wanted to create contemplation. I wanted to generate debate. I wanted to generate discussion. I want it to be something that we can talk about and gnash our teeth on and yeah, but this and that. I want that, right? That's why for me, I've been really grateful for the coaches who have purchased the books for their teams. Again, we're just a few weeks into having delivered this, but already I'm getting feedback like, wow, we had such a great discussion as a team. The whole team sat around, we talked about this concept. This athlete felt this way about it. This athlete felt a different way about it. Here's how this person was going to apply it. Here, this person had a completely different way, and it was, and for the coach to be sort of enlightened about a concept that we might just drive, oh, do this on the whiteboard, but then to generate conversation because most of the concepts aren't a go do this. It's more like, here's a concept. Here's some things that work for some athletes. Here's some things you might consider. It generates discussion. It's
Yeah.
non-formulaic. It's about you figuring out what works best for you individually, or we as a team figuring out what works best for us collectively. And it's not about like, again, plugging in the formula so that you get the result you want. It's about contemplation about the variables in the formula, making sure that they're the ones that might work best for you.
You know, I like that soundbite. Can we do something here real quick?
Yeah.
Is I want you to basically repeat what you just said,
Oh
but I'm going
gosh.
to ask the question
Okay, dude, because I don't
of
even remember what I said.
I'm gonna ask this question because I want to use this as a soundbite here. Is I'm gonna ask um, how do you envision people purchasing this book, like coaches and athletes, then using the book? Because I love that you
Okay.
said of like the coach basically kind of doing like a group session, kind of like a book club type of deal, or the
Right.
contemplative athlete, thinking about one of these concepts for a 17-hour plane flight. Like,
Right.
I just want you to capsulate that into one response
Sure.
to this question. Okay.
Got it.
All right. So let me ask you. All right. So Jeff, how do you envision then those purchasing this book using the book, such as coaches and athletes? How would they in the real world use something like this?
I know because of the feedback I've gotten already from coaches, even though we're sort of in early days of this being out there and having been published recently, that coaches are using it in team settings where the entire team will sort of like a book club, the entire team will read a concept and then having a conversation around how did this land for them? What sort of meaning do they attach to it? How might they actually, use it in a utilitarian fashion so that the individual athlete might be impacted by it? So the athletes themselves, conversing about like how this affects them individually, and then from a team perspective, having conversations about, okay, how can we put behaviors, put actions, put some intention behind these concepts so that they can help us perform better. So already I'm getting feedback that coaches are doing that in team settings and group settings, athlete to athlete. I'm hearing that like within whether they're on the same team or they're not on the same team, just people getting together and just talking about the different concepts and about how that might apply and what about for you and that sort of thing. Parent child and young athletes, I'm hearing that, oh my gosh, my dad and I had an amazing discussion, like we haven't had this discussion before, and it was really it opened up opportunities for us to talk about things that we didn't really know how to go there. It was sort of an awkward thing to talk about as it relates to our relationship within the sport. And then I've had other individual athletes talk about having, as I say in the introduction and preface, like I really would hope people would like real old school, like get out your highlighter, get out your pencil, like write stuff in the margin, highlight stuff. And so, so for my pro pickleball guy who had a 17-hour flight to Indonesia, like rather than it being read the book for 17 hours, it's like read the 5 minute or 10 minute soundbite and then set it down and write for 17 hours, not really, but to spend time really digging in on it and what does this mean for me and how might I apply this? So those are the ways that I intended for the book to be utilized, and thus far the feedback I'm getting is that's what's happening. It's been sort of interesting feedback from my publishers, feedback from other people like, gosh, you're not getting a lot of reviews, what's going on? So I'm reaching to the people, some of the people who have the book, and they're like, dude, yeah, I've been crushing this thing. I'm like, okay, really? Because I haven't heard anything from you. They're like, well, yeah, that's because I'm only on page 20. Like I've had it for 20 days and I've been doing a page a day and I'm really absorbing it, right? I'm not going from one
Wow.
to 350 pages. So basically, people are reading the book in the way that I had intended, but it's sort of like, okay, well, when you get to the end, it'd be nice to get a review about what you think about it. But like they're only like they're like a tenth of the way through the book because they're slow because I want it to be done in a slow burn, and so people are actually doing what I asked, and that's how I intended it to be used, and people are actually doing that so far. So it's pretty cool.
Wow. Yeah, that's that's I am thinking about something you had said about halfway through the conversation. And it got me thinking about kind of the other fields involved in sport. And when you look at them at the surface level, everything from strength and conditioning to diet and nutrition to even tactics and strategy on the logistical side of things, there's such a input output
Yeah.
to sport, right? If I yeah, I just see this this transaction happening,
Yeah.
and I like what you're bringing to the table because it is counterintuitive to
Mhm.
this kind of sport machine we
Yeah.
see
Yeah.
right now.
Yes.
Is no one's, you don't hear any messaging about stopping and taking a break.
Exactly. It's the opposite. It's the opposite. Yeah, again, it's the hack. It's the simple method. It's the five easy steps. It's the quickest way to get to a whatever. And that is exactly the opposite of what I intend my book to be. It's the opposite of what I've taught. I mean, obviously in the work that we do, we want people to get up to speed and to learn things and to be, have actionable behavioral change and impact performance sooner than later. I appreciate that that's the intent. I mean, we're in the results business. We're in the winning business. Okay.
Yeah.
Clearly. However, like how one gets there and how permanent it is and how deeply rooted it is, I think is an important thing to consider because a lot of people sort of skim surface, have the early hit on something, but they haven't really they haven't really grown in the areas that are going to sustain them for the long hauls in their sport or in whatever they happen to do. So my intent is that this book drives more of that sort of deeper rooted awareness and thus deeper rooted behavior change and intention so that it becomes more habituated and not just something where we're just checking boxes so that we can get to the finish line on something.
Substance.
That's
That's
in
that's
theory,
what rings to my
that's the
ear.
intent. That's the intent. That's what I like to think that this book is about. Yes. Yes.
I like that. I like that. And I feel like I'm really resonating with that right now, just even on a personal level, because we have all of these advances in sport, these amazing advances from the data science side of stuff to
Yeah.
the biotech. I mean, it is unbelievable. We got stuff that you just spray on injuries and people feel like
Crazy.
it's
Crazy.
insane where we're at now, right?
Yeah.
Um, but yet I ask myself, has our condition changed?
Hmm.
Like, in spite of all of this, have we become better people?
Uh,
Like, has sport become better,
mhm.
qualitatively?
Right.
Um, and I like that this book is forcing us to ask the question differently.
Yeah.
I like that.
I appreciate that. That again, these are sort of the subtle intentions behind the book, and you're nailing them. Yeah, I find myself um, I'm not an unloving critic of sport. I'm a critical lover, and
Mm,
and and
mm,
for me, the path that we have been on. I'm going to sound like the old guy on his, which I probably am, the old guy on his soapbox, but the path that we have. I feel like we've lost our way a little bit in terms of what I believe is that are the healthier reasons why one engages in something like sport. And again, this book is for more than just athletes and more than just coaches. It's really a life book that under the auspices of sport development. And I feel like, frankly, that maybe societally and just in general, we've got some rude awakenings to happen before we get ourselves back on track. And I don't put myself out there as some sort of guru or, I'm not Gandhi or whoever, but I do feel like with what's happening in Division One and college athletics nowadays, and
yeah.
with what's happening in so many areas of sport, I just feel like we're losing our way a little bit about what I would like sport to be about, which, that's my own personal value judgment, I guess. And I like to think that some of the things that I talk about in the book or some of the things that I help sort of bring to the light of day, I hope it helps people reset a little bit in ways that I think are healthier for them personally. I think are healthier for society. So there's a little bit of that in there, and it's not me evangelizing. It's not me, like forcing any sort of methodology on anyone, but it's more again contemplating like, is what you're doing really working, and is what you're doing really healthy,
Mm,
and are there ways that you can do this in a way that have deeper substance and more ultimate, constructive effect.
yeah. 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 I love it, Jeff. I love it, Jeff. All right, that's all the questions I've got for you.
Great, man.
That's it. I even added a
I
couple in
appreciate
there
it.
too.
Thank you. Thanks for all this. I appreciate it.
That was incredible, man. So I still need to get your book.
I thought I sent you one, dude.
Did you send me one?
I thought I did.
Let
Well,
me.
you would know. It would have showed up at your doorstep.
No.
Yeah, I don't my
Let's
my
see. Did I have the digital pages? Oh, I do have it. Okay, I do have it. I do have it. I do
Okay.
have it. I do have it. Okay. So
Okay.
I am going to. Okay, you did send me that one image, right? I think you sent me an image of the
Yeah.
book.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna use that. Um, I don't need to use your headshot, do I?
No.
No. Okay. All right. Yeah. So I've got that book, and then I can do um, and then what I'll do is Let me see here. Yeah, I'll figure out how to put some. I'll put some sort of image together so it's a pro image. Yeah, I'll figure that out. Okay, yeah. So then, what I'm going to do now then is I can go ahead and I can do pause this.